right.
We're good. Good evening and welcome to tonight's roundtable discussion on the Grayson Network. My name is Danny Ellison and I am your host. This evening I am joined by my best friends in the political realm and our co-host for this evening, Miss Josie Cruz, running for the United States Congress in Georgia's 4th Congressional District, and Mr. Derek Grayson, running for the United States Senate here in the state of Georgia. We will be joined tonight by several other of our panelists, which we will introduce to you later. Today is July 15th, tax day in 2020. Our conversation tonight, we will be discussing the COVID-19 response from the federal and state levels, along with the strategic plan for returning to schools. What will this look like for our children? Is it too soon, or is it time to go back? And at the same time, we're going to bridge in the conversation with forced vaccinations. Is vaccinations the mainstream media and mainstream agenda of today? Let's find out. Let's see what our panelists have to say. We are also welcomed tonight by Mr. Hank Sullivan, a professor of his art and one of our contributors here on the panel, along with Ms. Catherine Bernard this evening, a defense attorney based out of Atlanta that represents us well in the state capitol and assists us without us even knowing that she's doing
Catherine
so.
Bernard.
As we move forward this evening,
Join
I would like
the
to
meeting.
start off with our panelist, Mr. Derek Grayson. Derek, tonight, the media has been overtaken. Our life has been overtaken economically. The House of Representatives, the United States Senate, our medical advisors from the Health and Human Services and every other three-letter agency out there. What say you? Is it time to reopen schools? Is it too early?
I think it is time to open schools. Other countries are opening schools. There's also plenty of empirical data that is available that shows that children are the least impacted by corona. Now, you know, they can still do the distancing, which I'm sure they're going to do at any rate to protect children from becoming carriers if they are not already. But in terms of children being at high risk from sickness from corona, you know, it's time to go back to school. And I think we ought to take a lesson from other countries that are doing it and working it and making it happen. And we need to do the same thing. And the other point that I want to add, and I'll shut up, the ones that will suffer the most if we continue to keep schools shut down. And I know several teachers that are personal friends of mine that have already voiced concerns. The poorer students with, and I hate to say it, but I'm just going to put it out there, with the sorriest parents, those students will suffer if schools continue to remain closed. Many of them, not too far from where I live, there is one of those extended stay hotels. The school bus goes there to pick up children. They don't provide them with internet access. How are they going to get access to online learning? So you have that issue. And then when you have parents that simply use schools during the daytime as daycare, they aren't concerned about their children's education. Are they going to make sure that they are meeting their objectives, et cetera, et cetera? So my point is, our schools, unfortunately, are places where some kids go to eat. They are places where kids can go and be at least socialized around other kids on proper behavior, provided the school is not, you know, full of a bunch of teachers that really don't care what the children do. So I want the schools to open, and I don't want children to fall through the cracks that I know most likely will, and most of those will be minority children, or to put it straight out there, Black kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek, for your contribution in this conversation. So just so those of you that are joining in and seeing now, tonight's conversation is about COVID-19, our government's response at the federal and state levels in preparation for returning to schools. What is the true agenda? What is the true impact on our children? Is there an underlying issue that we as the citizenry and parents should be concerned about. In our introductory statements, I'd like to now shift over to Josie Cruz for a 2-minute spot before we give Hank Sullivan his 10-minute position here on the show. Josie, what say you? Same question as Derek. What's going on here?
School needs to be open up. They shouldn't never close the schools at all. Derek already explained the numbers and the high risk for this COVID-19 are the elderly. And a lot of them are being at home and being taken care of, except New Jersey, where they have a lot of them dying because the strategies and the policies implemented by these mayors and governors in that state. But here, yes, it should have never been closed. It should stay open. And any teacher who was above some age should stay home, take time off, vacation or PTO or something like that, and let the young teachers and the children continue with that. But what is done is done. And we could see in Europe, there was one of the countries, I cannot remember the name in Europe, the country that they never closed. No, they never closed anything. Everybody continue working, everybody continue going to school, everybody in the whole population developed the ability and with their own body to build up how to fight back this virus. And me being working in the medical field for a few years, we know the difference between a bacteria and a virus. And the virus, what you need for the virus is to build up your immune system, drink a lot of vitamins, everything that comes with the immune, build it up, and let your body fight it back. That's what we do that's what I do when the flu season comes. My mother is 70-something, 77. She takes the flu shot because her age is a little different. But everybody who are young, like everybody here, sitting in here, everybody's young. We could take advantage of building up our immune systems. The agenda? Well, I believe that the agenda behind all this is making people scared, and people focus on something that they don't have nothing to do but what's going on. It's a distraction. And of course, there is people who are dead because of COVID-19, but not the numbers that they are trying to implement. I believe this is more like a control.
Josie, I'm gonna have to jump in real quick so we can get over to Hank. And you bring up a very interesting point that we're going to be addressing this evening about the numbers. What are the numbers? So stay tuned for that. Right now, I'd like to turn over to Mr. Hank Sullivan. Hank, welcome to the show. Thank you for being such a faithful panelist and joining us at this time, as our normal scheduling would provide. I yield 10 minutes just to you.
Well, I appreciate that, Danny. As far as the question, whether the schools should open and kids should go back to school, yes, of course. I don't see anything special about COVID-19 that we don't already deal with year after year with every other kind of virus in the world and every other flu that we deal with in the world. The economy should never have been closed down. This entire thing is being trumped up every morning when you get up and you turn on the TV or you turn on the radio. Someone is planting the idea in your mind that there's something special about COVID-19 that we've got to take advantage of, that we've got to surrender our lives to, and it's just not the case. And I will say this: I heard Derek speak boldly about going back to school. Yes, it's time to go back to school. Well, in the race for the U.S. Senate against Doug Collins as one of the candidates. I heard Doug the other day, they asked him the very same question, and Doug would only say, I'm hopeful that the kids can go back to school. Well, that didn't sit very well with me, because I was looking for someone to lead on the issue, to decide whether the kids should go back to school or not. Being hopeful, well, we're all hopeful that the kids can go back to school, but that's being non-committal, and it's trying to be trying to agree with everyone. And I don't think that I think Doug would have been much better off if he had just gone and made a commitment one way or the other and just told us what he believed. But we're talking about the agenda that's going on here. Now, last week I explained how it is that wearing masks dovetails into a smartphone app, which dovetails into contact tracing, which dovetails into these RF chips that could be implanted in your body in order to then become a controlling agent by the government and whoever is controlling the government for all the people. Just this morning on WSB, I always listen to it every morning so I can see what it is that they want me to believe. And this morning, of course, they came out and said that now they have a smartphone app so that you can turn this app on your phone and you can know whether you are coming in close proximity to someone who is tested positive from COVID-19. So all of that is just, it's all rolling out. So you can pay attention to it, and in time, it's all going to roll out, as long as, say, President Trump doesn't stop it. If for some reason he loses in November, you can bet every bit of this is going to roll out. But anyway, let's talk about the agenda here, and talking about whether the kids should go back to school, whether they shouldn't. You kind of, even if you were debating that issue, which I don't even think is debatable, you'd have to rely on some good information to be able to make that determination. But we have learned that there is no reliable information on COVID-19 cases or COVID-19 caused deaths. It's just not there. Every bit of it is manipulated. It's coming out in practically every mainstream media source. Rush Limbaugh was talking about it today. We saw it in Fox 5. They in Orlando. They went and checked out all of these locations that are doing the testing and reporting, and they're all coming back with manipulated data. So there just is no good data on that. So my next question is why? Why is there no good data? Well, that's because those in the government, including the CDC, and those in the mainstream media telling you to wear masks are known compulsive and congenital liars, and they do not want you to know the truth. So then you got to ask yourself, well, why don't they want us to know the truth? Well, their financial well-being and their political power depend on you remaining ignorant. Well, how does that play together? Why is that? Well, if you're ignorant, then you can be manipulated. So why is that? Why would they want to manipulate you? Because they have a political agenda that has nothing to do with truth or whether you remain well. It's only whether you can be controlled and whether you will obey and do what you're told. Why do they want that? The people who truly run this world and have done so for as long as we've all been alive remain in control by lying to you, by manipulating you to believe that they're on your side, working for your best interests, when really they're working solely for their own interests and the interest of those above them while they steal from you. I mean, I hate to be so bold, but this is just the truth. They have no reason, they have absolutely no reason to tell you the truth about anything that they're doing, anything that they know, or anything that they're planning to do. Why? Because neither you nor the rest of the American people would like it. Therefore, there's nothing these people see to be in their interest for you to understand what the heck they're really doing to promote their own interests at your expense. So knowing all that, why would any rational person believe that these known congenital compulsive liars why would you believe them when they tell you that it's in your best interest that you wear a mask? I ask you that question. Well, obviously, you shouldn't be wearing a mask, if for no other reason because they say it's good for you and they're liars. So, will you get COVID-19? I've known some people. I know my electrician had a mild case of COVID-19. He tested positive. Whether the test was good, I don't know. He may have had something else and the test is just faulty. So maybe you might get COVID-19. Will wearing a mask make any difference in whether you get COVID-19? Well, the known congenital compulsive liars said that it will. That means probably that if you're a normal, healthy individual, likely it will make no difference whatsoever. So the last question, if you get COVID-19, are you going to die? Well, the known congenital liars want you to think that there's a good chance that you will. So once again, based upon that, if you're a normal, healthy individual, likely you're not going to die. But if you do have, say, comorbidities or poor health, likely any virus or any severe effect on your health could cause you to succumb, in which case you should do anything and everything necessary to protect your health, which you should do regardless of COVID-19. And that means that you may want to wear a mask at times if you're in an unhealthy environment. Why? Because you can. That's really the only reason why that would be necessary, because you would feel better about doing it. That's the way that I see it, fellas.
Wow. Hank, great breakdown, and thank you for sharing that with us. Now we're going to get in a little bit into the weeds. Pushing on, we're obviously still joined by Catherine Bernard. Catherine, I'm going to come to you here shortly. But I said last week when we were on air that this week it was going to be my intent to start a fight. And I'm kind of passionate about this topic tonight because I think it is actually the stepping point that many of us in the spiritual and religious sector have been studying and learning about for many years, about the Antichrist's position to become omnipresent and omnipotent by way of using a system that brings everybody to him through technology. That's what this is all about, ladies and gentlemen. Just stick with us. Let's get deeper into it. Derek, coming back to you, let's talk about the COVID-19 insurgency, where the takeover of all of humanity, not just Americans or those that are allies to us, but the impoverished nations, the rich nations around the world, those that get along and those that don't. We're all faced with the same condition, and that is to be in public. Kroger and Walmart just announced here in the United States, you're going to have to wear a mask. Now, to feed this question, what about retina scan technology? Best way to market somebody and be able to read a camera is to be able to read their retina without facial recognition. Let's go deeper. So if facial recognition is something common to us that we're all talking about now, maybe the mask is a setup for them to go a little further. Derek, what say you?
Well, you know that I've been in technology for the last 30 years. MARTA and the police department here in Atlanta, they were working with facial recognition software 7-8 years ago. And it is in use to some degree where we are now. However, with the facial recognition, wearing masks kind of gets in the way of that. So I don't know how that's going to shake out. I think the mask issue is something that is being brought about for social conditioning more so than anything else. I truly believe, as Hank has laid out, on more than one occasion, and so have I, that when the crisis of Trump in the minds of liberals and rhinos has subsided, provided they think that they are going to defeat him in 2020, you'll see all of this go away. All of this will go away. But all of the other tools that they are bringing to bear, I read about what Hank is talking about as far as the app a few weeks ago, and I shared it. But as I have said before, Mr. Ellison, you can tell people things and they won't believe it. They will do these things under the cuff and sometimes in your face. So we're talking about covertly and overtly, and people still won't believe it. Now, I don't know what the cure is for that. The only thing that I know is that for people like ourselves is to continue to always be the beacon of light and putting the word out there for the people to hear. Not all of them will get it. Not all of them will even understand it if they hear it. But technology in the hands of government is not necessarily your friend. And that's what people need to understand about technology. So Hank laid out that application that they're talking about where you put your finger on a device. See, that's that mark. You know, you got everybody that was running around talking about them, you know, putting a tattoo on the back of your hand. Well, you know, the mark will be your fingerprint. If that's what's going to be required, you've got to have a vaccine. So they don't necessarily have to pass a law saying mandatory vaccine, but technology will let them know that you aren't in their database for having a vaccine. So if you want to shop here in Walmart, it won't be about the mask, because I'm telling you, the masks are going to go away. It'll be about that application. If you haven't gotten if your mark doesn't have all of the dots checked, you won't be able to go and buy groceries. So, you know, we've already talked about that. Technology is a wonderful thing. But when technology is turned on the people in an effort to control them, technology can be a dangerous thing. I yield.
Very well said, Derek. And I think you've touched on a lot of the bases. Josie, coming to you, kind of to piggyback on what Derek's saying, you know, so, okay, so maybe the theory that the mask is there for retina scan doesn't work. It doesn't check out. It doesn't meet the technological advancement. But he still suggests that technology is just as important in this conversation as anything else in the advancement of it. Well, now here in the state of Georgia, where school boards are doing things completely different. All of them have different agendas, different bases, but one thing is absolutely common, and that is when the schools return, the schools are safe enough for the children, but not safe enough for the parents. The parents have to have appointments and they're kept at the front door, and only the children can go beyond. I would say as a father, as a grandfather, that my child can't go to a place that's not safe for me. What say you, Joseph?
Well, the mask is just a way of teaching the population of a specific city to be in a natural way submitted to something. This is just the training process to get into one point. The point that you just touched, the last point that you just touched, Danny, is separating parents from their children. So the school now is taking control, completely control on our children when they are coming to these institutions. We are dropping them off on the front of the school. We are not allowed to go in, and the children go. So this is more about civil control. This is more about submission. This is more about get people used to the submission concept. And they are using Americans, the subject the American doesn't, they are more afraid, or they are more careful about their life. For example, they tried, the economy didn't work. They tried so many things to put us in our knees, and it did not work. But they know American takes care of the elderly. American provide good health system. They know that our bodies, our mind, our emotion are very important for Americans. So this is one way for them to break us, because now when you are in fear that your body is going to be contagious, or the next person next to you are going to be contagious, so you let your guards down, and then the process of the people to get used to submission by the mask. One lady was telling me on Facebook, "Why are you complaining? You Americans are complaining so much. What you are doing every day with COVID-19 is what we call Sharia law." I said, "What do you mean you call Sharia law?" "Well, you guys wash your hands every time you have the chance. That's one of the part of Sharia law. Covering the face, that's part of Sharia law. Distancing yourself from other people." So when she pointed that to me, and she was basically like making fun of us, the American, that we were doing without we knowing the process of submission. In this case, she compared it to her own religion. Of course, we are not doing Sharia law, but she took it like America were falling into the submission of. Those are some signals I write there. And then I went to court on Monday, all right? And when I was walking into court on Monday to ask some questions, first I requires a mask. Thanks God I had a mask in my bag. I don't usually use it. And then without my permission, a person inside, before they scan you, your body, somebody with a electrical gun point to my to take the temperature in my forehead without my permission. So we are getting used to other people take those rights that we have through this COVID-19. So I just wanted to say it how it is. It happens in Venezuela now with the technology, how it's happening in here. But before, over there, if you didn't have the card, you cannot buy and sell. Today, if you don't have the mask, you will not be able to buy, to go to the store, grocery store, and buy. And you cannot even go to the bank to withdraw your money, anything, if you don't have the mask. I yield.
Look, Josie, I hear you saying this is a training program of the future, and that our children are watching their parents and their grandparents, their uncles, nieces, nephews, and aunties be pulled left and right to where submission is the end game. And in the rule of submission, it starts indirectly. It seems as though we're protecting you. You must do these things. But I don't know that I would agree that it's happening right now for us to be the ones submitting. I think they know there's a fight in all of us. But I would argue that they're probably after our children. The Bible says, "Children, obey your parents, for this is what pleases the Lord." And in that, children are obeying a system, not God. With that, I'm going to take a step off of this discussion here in the panel, and I would like to bring in Catherine Bernard. Catherine, thank you for being patient and waiting with us as we're talking about a spiritual and nasty psychological war game that is taking place with us, and inevitably it's going to roll over to our children a little bit deeper and a little bit harder. And I think we might drift in our conversation about how do we prepare our kids for a fight that they've never seen. Catherine, welcome to the show. The next 10 minutes is yours.
Well, thanks again for having me, Danny. I so enjoy the discussion. And, as much as everyone is making these excellent points about how we're being conditioned through masks and fear, and I agree with all of that, I can't help but feel a little bit of optimism too. And maybe that's because last week I was coming to you from a parking lot in Dublin where I had just spent the day in jail visiting a bunch of incarcerated young men. And today I am in the mountains of Virginia with my family, so that always makes someone a little bit more optimistic. But it's also the discussions I've been having with people about masks over the past week. Yes, it is very troubling how we seem to be backsliding and more places are requiring masks, regardless of the fact that, most people acknowledge it's theater. It's not actually keeping people safe from a virus, but it makes everybody feel better. And so there are a lot of people who are doing this out of fear that, they will be judged negatively, out of fear that they will actually get the virus, out of fear that they're going to get into some kind of trouble. And so I think the calculation that a lot of them have been making reminds me of Pascal's wager. So for those who aren't familiar with it, it's the mathematician Blaise Pascal said it was his argument for believing in God. Because what does it hurt if you believe in God? Because then you'll go to heaven. And if you don't believe in God, well, if there's no God, it's not that big a deal. But if there is, then you're really in trouble. So it makes a lot more sense to believe in God, according to Pascal's wager. And I think that's the way a lot of people are taking the mask issue. They're thinking, well, it's just a little piece of cloth. I'm just being considerate of my neighbors. What's the big deal? Why are my friends so paranoid about this? The same ones who have been telling me about all the terrible things government has been doing. And so one of the things that's been effective for me in the conversation with these folks is to talk to them about the trade-offs that come with mask wearing. And this was something I know I brought up last week as we are going into our 5th month of having the entire judicial system effectively shut down because there are no grand juries or jury trials, leaving countless people in very dangerous situations for their rights. And so the folks who are very pro-mask, they tend to be on the more progressive side. They tend to be concerned about human rights, or at least to think of themselves as that way. And so I just remind them, hey, we've got to have an end point on these masks, because it's not like you can do everything in a mask that you can do without one. I can't do jury trials. My clients can't have their rights protected. And so, with my sorority sisters, with my mom friends, with folks who are not necessarily on the same wavelength as most of the people on this broadcast, that has seemed to resonate with them when they actually think about, wearing masks could hurt people too, because they think of themselves as, masking is righteous. They think of it as a good opportunity to virtue signal, to show everyone else how considerate, how respectful they are. And there is some good in that attitude. We want people who care about their impact on other human beings. But just like it wouldn't be appropriate for someone to go to the house of someone who was overweight and maybe not taking their vitamin D supplements and say, hey, I'm putting you on a diet so that you don't get COVID-19 and infect me and my grandparents, just like that wouldn't be appropriate. It's not appropriate for people to get vicious and ugly with each other about their choices of whether or not to mask. So that's why I'm feeling a little bit of optimism, even in spite of all the conspiracies that, too many of them turn out to be true, as the things that Hank was talking about earlier. Too many of them do turn out to be true. But the great contradiction is, like Mark Twain said, it is so much easier to fool someone than it is to convince him that he has been fooled. So when you're talking to people who have already made the decision to start wearing a mask, we're not going to get anywhere if we try to shame or mock them. It just reinforces their position and makes them dig in more and think, look at me being so virtuous and willing to sacrifice instead of my selfish friends who only care about their liberty. And as long as that's the dialogue, we're going to lose, because people want to take care of the people around them. So if we can change that narrative and show people how these mask mandates, how these edicts actually do impact people, and disproportionately more vulnerable sections of the population are impacted further. Access to public infrastructure is harder for them in a masked society where playgrounds are shut down, basketball courts are shut down, public pools are shut down. This decision of the way we are dealing with COVID-19 is having a hugely disproportionate impact on poorer and more vulnerable people in our society. And that is my hope, that these, wonderful progressives who want to save grandma by wearing a mask, that if we can help them understand the costs that come along with that, that we'll be able to to join in the fight, to use Danny's phrasing, we'll be able to join in the fight on the same side, that we all want to protect society, whether it's from a virus or whether it's from an oppressive government that's taking away our rights and hurting poor people.
Wow. So, Catherine, I would suggest that we take that sound bite and just frame that one section of your explanation here. It's common for me on this show to bring up viewpoints that are somewhat controversial, obviously, on this panel. Not saying that they're my own viewpoints, but, let's discuss each side of this. And that takes me a little bit further in, Catherine. You hit a couple points that I think are absolutely phenomenal. But I've got to come over to Hank Sullivan. And I want to ask Hank, if you would, for just a minute, indulge me and entertain me. What do you think about the opposition to the mask-wearing philosophy, where some medical practitioners are coming out saying, you know what, the best thing we could do in humanity is simply become herd immune. Herd immunity is the best option in all of this, and history's shown us that. Hank, what say you?
Well, first of all, I want to also agree in a certain amount of optimism. I'm very optimistic. If nothing else, I think people are going to get really tired of wearing masks. I mean, that will rub you wrong for a good long time. If you wear a mask constantly for day after day after day, you're going to get really tired of it. So I think people are finally going to just say, screw this mask, I'm throwing it off there. And that's just a natural thing that's going to happen. I'm also optimistic because you talk, Danny, a lot about the spiritual things here. I don't think God has given up on this country, and I don't think God wants us to wear a mask. In fact, I think God I believe God does not want us to wear a mask because for spiritual reasons, if nothing else. But God, I believe God is on. He's trying to bring America together in a godly way. And I think that in order to do that, people have got to see this for themselves. I get in conversations with people online and elsewhere about these matters. And I don't necessarily believe that I'm ever going to change anyone's mind who's already on the other side of the fence. But what I do is I try to put the arguments out there because there are other people who are sitting on the fence and they don't see it this way, they don't see it that way, but they're looking at this discussion back and forth. And so you've got people on both sides who are giving contrasting views. And it's those people, I believe, that we can affect one way or the other, not necessarily the people who've already made up their decisions. Those people, just like I did, just like Derek has, and that probably everybody here, there came a moment in your life when something changed and you saw some truth that you did not see before. And all of a sudden, something just fed your brain and everything changed. Well, I believe that can happen with even the folks on the other side. I don't think that they're there yet, but I'm optimistic that they will be. If nothing else, they're going to get really tired of wearing those freaking masks.
Well, I apologize for that. I was having a technical issue here on my end, but Hank, I think that you're absolutely right. So as these comments are going on, and I want to reassert that this is a political forum, but in that forum, I believe, and this is my position as a host, that politics does not exist without the God of Joshua, Jacob, and the others. My point being said that the politics of today here in our country, in the United States, are based on the premise of our forefathers. This country was built one nation under God. I will not yield that position. I will not yield or ask anybody else to yield that position. In order to be effective in the political spotlight, religion and spirituality has its placard here. So as the comments and the threads are going on, we're learning more, people's concerns about how these masks are becoming a fashion statement. So when people are getting annoyed with the process that the government's trying to force on them, then somebody comes out and tries to make it fun. We're going to have sports leagues and all types of alma maters and our sororities and our fraternities and all of these things on the mask where we can go and display our brand new set of shoes. Derek, coming over to you. Let's see how bad you want to start a fight, Mr. Grayson.
Okay.
Be told in the misleading of this mask complex, right? I want to throw something at you just out of left field. What about the 17th Amendment? And I bring that up because we have a House and a Senate that is not doing its job, not a single one of them up there fighting to tell the people that you are free people and that the science is not advanced enough to quarantine you to a mask, and this political hoax that's taking place and this overthrow of your rights and this misleading of your children. What if we were to repeal the 17th and actually give the power back to the governors and the people to recall their Senate? What would that look like?
So I've had this conversation with people many times. The conversation over the 17th, conversation over having a constitutional convention. And here is what I say to them, Mr. Ellison. What difference would it make if we still have a den full of thieves? It'll make no difference. You aren't going to fix anything. If the governors are going to pick our senators for us, look at Loeffler. If the people are going to continue to vote for our senators, but don't pay attention to what the senators have done in the past, what have we accomplished? If the House were to pick the senators, if there are a bunch of crooks like Ralston leading the charge, what difference will it make? It won't make any. And I reiterate again, the problems in this country are a direct result of bad politicians. We already know what to expect from liberal Democrats. They do what they do. You look at their constitutional voting records, none of them bust 30%. But when you have these others, the rhinos, that do what they do, that gives aid and comfort to liberal Democrats, what does it matter who picks our senators if the people under our own house is corrupt themselves, or if we continue to deal with situations where voters don't even pay attention to the things that their representatives are doing? And that's it. I think I was the only guy that did a press release. And Scott, you keep me honest. When asked the question, where do I stand on the governor opening Georgia back up? Forthwith, I put forth the document. Scott wordsmithed it to make sure I didn't have any asterisks to mask any hidden expletives. Of course, that would be up to your own imagination. And we sent it in. You know, I stand firm. I am for the people first. I believe in the liberty of the individual, but just changing chairs with crooks or changing the process when crooks are still in charge does us no good. All it does is it'll placate a bunch of people like Mark Levine, who was pushing for articles of a constitutional convention. And of course, you know, I've heard people often talking about repealing the 17th Amendment. And I say, if we repeal it, take it away from the people, you know, we got other crooks that are going to select the crooks for us. And so the only thing that I see that I would like to see repealed would be the Federal Reserve Act, the 16th Amendment. I'd like to see the IRS abolished. And that's what I would like. I think that would do the country some good if we if the next phase in 2020 was Donald Trump finally taking it to the Federal Reserve and dealing them the final.
Derek, I'm gonna stop you there, Derek, because I don't want us to get off on a conversation that I have in my pocket. Now I asked the question in the preface. I wanted to see how much of a fight Derek wanted to make, and of course, you take the long way around to get to the fight you want to start. So, Derek, I will give you that in one of our shows. I promise you, I will give you a 16th show. But with that being said, Alex Johnson is in with us tonight. And Alex, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming back in. To give you an idea of where we've been before we figured out the passions of Mr. Grayson, I have to tell you that we've been talking about COVID-19. We've been talking about federal response, the state response, the response of school systems trying to reopen, whether this is a lawful act that's truthfully defending the American people, or whether this is an attempt to distract us, train us to be obedient and submissive to the system, where schools are presenting that it's not safe for their parents to enter, but it's safe for their children to enter. I take the position that if it's not safe for me, then it's not safe for my children. From that, we've talked about a lot of different things. The terminology, hearing about the political hoax. We've heard about the COVID-19 insurgency. We've heard about bringing the people into the system, the possibility of technology being used to be the anchor in which we've all been adapted to, our paychecks and our food and our cash apps and our ability to order food over our phone to where we can pick it up from the grocery and it's just sit in the trunk. So simple if you're just obedient to the system. So Alex, the next 10 minutes is yours to legally explain to us what it is that you want to talk about tonight. But I would ask that maybe you just take a second to tell me legally, what do you think about a technical world that's trying to take us all over?
Well, I will say that there are a lot of good things that are coming regarding technology. I mean, the move over to ordering groceries online. I mean, that is, I never thought of doing it before, and now it's a lot more convenient. I mean, saves a lot of time. There's some good things about it. I mean, but I think that ultimately the bad thing and what's spurring along the development of video conferencing and how easy that's going, and same thing with online voting in various political contexts, like in organizations. The real issue, though, is that it's distancing people from each other. And the fact is that if that's happening voluntarily, that's great. You know, if people are voluntarily staying away from each other and don't want to be around other people, people should have the freedom to do that. But what's going on now with COVID, and what I thought about ever since I heard that would be the main topic tonight, is the fact that compelling people, or trying to compel people to, for example, right now it's the mask wearing that's the big issue. And I think that the idea of conditioning us to be obedient to government mandates, and especially mandates made by a few politicians while under executive orders, is extremely concerning. In Georgia, one thing that's going on right now is the fact that in order to defend against some of these executive orders being issued on the city level or the county level, which has happened, I know, in DeKalb County and Dunwoody, where I live, but also out in Savannah, is that you have to go and turn to another executive order, which is the governor's executive order, saying that these cities can't do it. And from a ranking perspective, I think that the governor's emergency order probably takes precedence, meaning that the local orders are, I agree with the governor that the local orders, since they can't be more restrictive than the state order, I think that those are all pandering in an attempt just to make these cities, especially liberal cities, look like they're doing something. But ultimately, that's extremely concerning overall on either executive order, that all of a sudden we should just be obedient to one or two politicians just under the guise of keeping people safe. I mean, people are going to keep themselves safe. No one wants to die from this disease. No one wants to get everybody else sick. And that's what we're facing, is people who truly believe that. I posted an article today from the Foundation for Economic Education, fee.org, that was talking about how that Sweden, how their numbers are comparing worldwide. Sweden was one of the few countries that did not mandate a lockdown like many others. And what's been going on with what of course the response now, though, I mean, is that a lot of liberals in the US are still responding back either with denial or saying to look at different countries or to look at things differently, which is, I mean, I guess it's confirmation bias at its finest. I mean, I'm not saying what the best policy is, but I am saying that when you start looking worldwide, I mean, there is no like one answer for this that could be made through a centrally planned authority. I mean, when people are getting, when people are dealing with disease, we each need to weigh the cost and benefits and the damage to the economy. One thing I may have mentioned in a previous week is the fact that the UN at one point talked about the fact that the lockdowns, I think this was back in March or April, that COVID could end up causing close to 150 million people to be pushed into starvation. And I've pointed out that that type of effect is easily predicted. I mean, if you end the cut down on the economy, factories close because no one's buying goods and going out and doing things, that can end up causing people, not in the United States, but in other countries, to starve. And the sad thing is that in these discussions, there are some liberals that seem to not understand. And these are, I mean, one who commented today on one of my posts is a fellow attorney who actually is like, well, the UN didn't say that the lockdowns are what cause like lead to starvation, like that somehow the economy isn't said in that report as the middle ground. But I mean, I think we all intrinsically, I mean, if you know anything about economics, you know that. I mean, if I'm not buying things, someone somewhere else isn't getting paid. And then that person is going to have whatever list of health issues, food issues, etc. So when the left is trying to say it's a choice between lives and the economy, and that somehow conservatives are heartless, I mean, that's not true. Without the economy, I mean, people starve and get sick and don't have homes and they die. And without people, there is no economy. So it's not an either or decision. The whole way the economy works is people voluntarily choosing what to do with their times and their labor and their lives. So the whole thing with COVID is these planned actions by the government to control people and to act like they're keeping us safe. They're really just telling us that we're too stupid to figure out how to keep ourselves safe. But in reality, what they're doing is they're making themselves more powerful and looking good, while the rest of while there are people who are suffering due to the fact that their free will and their choices are being taken away. And that's what I see happening with the mask orders with COVID. I mean, I think that people should wear masks to help reduce the rate of transmission to the extent that they can. But I don't think that anyone should be going to jail over it, that police should be detaining people, fining people. I mean, the people saying that they were afraid of law enforcement just last month are now wanting law enforcement to be stopping people and fining them and citing them for not wearing a mask. I mean, it's perverse. And I mean, people could easily be harmed or killed from those interactions. So the left, I think, doesn't understand the way that government authority works. It's enforced by a gun. It could lead to people being harmed or killed. And they just, I think that the politicians are just pandering and people are following them like they're the Pied Piper. So that's where I am on COVID and the legality of what's going on. And I hope people stand up to it.
Well, Alex, great way to jump in and continue the fight. Tonight is all about a fight. And ladies and gentlemen, I guarantee you, if you go back and you sift through the topic of tonight and you look at the response from your candidates for the United States Congress, the United States Senate, and you look at your legal panelists that are here visiting with us tonight, you're going to see that there's a position that our country clearly stands divided on. Alex, you mentioned something that was so profound, and I want to visit it for just a second. You mentioned that when people stop going to work, that certain people are not able to buy things anymore. Production's not there and they begin to get sick. Is it not the CDC and the HHS's position that people that are sick are predispositioned to become COVID patients? Seems eerily like something where a defense attorney might be needed to defend our people from, I don't know, controlled population growth or population reduction tactics. I've heard it before. I don't know how far stretched it is. Catherine Bernard, if I can get you back in for just a minute. I want to throw this one at you as a defense attorney. So we're experiencing things, and I'm going to use the state of Texas as an example. Live tonight data coming in, practice in Gillespie County, Texas, that the guards there have been protesting and refusing the governor's order to wear masks and gloves while in mass population. From that, they haven't had any positive cases or any reports of cases. But in a small little town called Fredericksburg, Texas, that city in and of itself all of a sudden reports a spike in cases of over 200. Then the sheriff responds and the guards begin wearing masks and wearing gloves and freaking out, but the inmates are left inside the facility to clean and tend to themselves without any personal protective equipment or anything of the sort. So now they're dealing with the mess of politics versus legalities, defense versus moral aptitude. Where do you stand, Catherine, as a defense attorney? What's the best benefit for the inmates?
That's such a tough question, Danny, because I'm seeing really two very different paths that jails and prisons have taken. You know, most of the prisons and jails around Georgia have not had any problem with COVID. None of the facilities that I've visited have even had any positive cases, you know, and that could be an issue with not doing enough testing. But if nobody is getting sick enough that they have to go get tested, that's a data point themselves. But at the same time, we are hearing that Clayton County is having a massive COVID outbreak and that at least one inmate has died within the past week. So I find myself, you know, wondering, what does this tell us about the way this virus spreads and who is most vulnerable to it? You know, certainly I think jailers should have the right to choose whether or not to wear personal protective equipment. It may be a safety thing. You know, it may be that if they feel like they are wearing masks and gloves, that they are going to come across as like an alien enemy to the people that they are supposed to be supervising, and they could consider it a security risk. So I'd be fascinated to hear more from those jailers themselves about their decision-making process. And I think this really echoes what Alex said about personal choice and personal responsibility being paramount. You know, that becomes very difficult in a situation like a jail or a prison, where obviously most of the people there don't want to be there. They are there against their will by definition. And so we do have a higher standard of care. You know, if we're going to take custody of their bodies, we've got to do our best job of keeping them safe. But again, we have just not seen the infections in jails and prisons that I think at the outset, if COVID-19 was as bad as we have been told that it is, I think we would have seen you wouldn't have had to tell the guards to put on masks. They would have been putting on the masks and striking and not going to work at all.
Well, Catherine, that's an amazing observation. And thank you for answering that question on the fly. And so what you point out now is we're talking about data points. We're talking about the media has sold us. My counter co-hosts on other shows that are on the mainstream network have all come out there and given you fear tactics, things to be afraid of, things to panic about. Hank Sullivan coming back at you. Is this a time to be afraid? Or is this a time for us to just get our stuff together? Literally wash our hands, brush our teeth, and take a shower at least once every other day.
Well, to answer that question, I just go back to the spiritual aspect of this. Is this, I think the people who just automatically pick up a mask and put it on their face, they do it out of fear. There's no other reason to do that. They're afraid that they're going to catch this virus. Well, I don't do that because, first of all, I'm not afraid that I'm going to catch the virus. And if I do catch the virus, I'm not afraid that I'm going to die. But even if I did die, I think I'm going to be okay. So you've got faith on one hand and you've got fear on the other hand, and they're at opposite ends of the spiritual spectrum there. So you got people who are really afraid of things. Well, they're thinking about things in this world. And you got people who are not really afraid of things, and they're looking at things not in this world, but in the next world. And I believe that there is a certain way that translates into an attitude toward this difficulty that we're presently having, but it also translates into an attitude toward life in general, whether you're going to be an optimistic person or you're going to be a pessimistic person, whether you're going to be a person who sees good in people, or you're going to see or you're going to be a person that sees bad in people, whether you're going to see a positive outcome from all of this, or if you see a negative outcome from all of this. I see a positive outcome from all of this. I believe that this is going to be a cleansing that's going to happen because of this. I think that there's a certain spiritual aspect to all of this that is wringing out the souls of America, and it's making people come to grips with things that they've never even had to think about it before. See, this manner that we're operating in right now, this is the way of the world. This isn't the way of America up till now. This is the way of the world. The world is like this. We're getting a taste of what it's like in all of those other countries in the world. We're understanding that there is an imperial government that is always going to be there, and it's always going to be telling you what to do. And if you don't do this, then you're going to be punished for it. Well, that's not the way that we've ever lived before, but we're getting a taste of that. And I think we need a taste of that. I think we've got to have this understanding, this come to grips and get it in our hearts, what America has been for us and what our founders gave to us in order to determine what this beast is that's attacking us. We don't really understand it unless we can see the dichotomy between what freedom is and what opportunity is versus what they're creating for us in this same environment. They're creating this attitude of fear instead of faith, and they're creating a pessimism in the entire country. But truly, I believe it's going to turn out in a good way. I believe that when we finally emerge from this, that the truth is going to be known about this virus, first of all, and the truth is going to be known about a lot of things that people have never really understood in the past. And when that truth comes out and the people can grasp it, I believe that God is going to open up the eyes of the American people, and I think that the American people are going to see it for the first time. And I think when that does happen, I believe there's going to be a cleansing in this country that we've never imagined in the past. And I believe that there's going to be a coming together of people, and I believe that ultimately we are all going to see things differently than we did going into this circumstance that we've been dealing with for the last several months.
I want to take a moment to thank you for being willing to continue tonight's show, The Fight. That being said, we've talked about fear and the unnatural creation that we have as human beings to be faulty and broken and nasty, born of flesh, aspiring to be led by spirit. And out of everything we see today, we watch the media push, and we watch the liberal left's agenda being pressed on us constantly and constantly. We have to be fearful. We have to be scared. And Hank, what I've seen is that it's conversations like this where we find the true heart of the American spirit. People that are resulted to their restoration of faith, finding God in the midst of their pain and in their suffrage and in their fear. But now I'm going to head over to the pastor. Pastor Grayson, whoo, buddy, here we come with a fight. Where's the mega church? Where's the pastors that have been out front in every situation? But they don't want a voice at this table. What say you?
Well, I think where they are is somewhere being obedient and not to God. The church is supposed to be a place where you can find refuge, sanctuary, if you will. Was a time in biblical antiquity, if a person was being pursued by his enemies, he could find sanctuary at the temple. But the fear that we see taking place has gripped even the Christians. Now, I'm in the camp with Hank. I don't wear a mask. I've spent only 2 days in the house since this whole thing began. My birthday and Easter. And the only reason I wasn't at church Easter is because I am not the senior pastor. But I made known to the senior pastor, any day the doors are open, if there's nobody in here but you and I will be at church. And, that's just what I do. That's just how I roll. But I want to throw something out here as quickly as possible. A video was released last week by Fox, an interview from a woman who claims to have escaped out of China for trying to reveal things that the world needs to know about Corona. Well, number one, if she had tried that, and if you listen to the interview, you kind of get a sense that she was warned. How did she get out of China in the first place? But she got out. And I listened to the entire video, everything that she had to say, and read the transcript. There was nothing new in her video, which was released last week. We already know that it didn't come from the wet market. We already know that it came out of a lab that received funding from the US, $3.7 million is the number that they put forward. We already know that it could be spread person to person. Everything in her interview was not new. With the exception, she kept throwing this out, and she said it several times. This is political. You need to be aware. To me, that was released, and what's suspect is that it came from Fox. She gave us no new information, nothing about who was responsible or how it got out in Wuhan. None of the important information. What is the actual mortality rate of those that have perished in China? None of that information, none of it. But she made point of making it known that this is a deadly virus. We need to take it seriously. We need to wear our masks. We need the social distance. Nothing new came out of that except for more fear. And this is why I tell people, when you listen to Fox, everything that comes out of Fox, you need to take with 3 grains of salt, because there's an agenda behind it. And the agenda behind that video was to further push the narrative of how deadly this virus is, and that we need to understand that this is not about politics. The hell it's not. It is about politics. It is about our economy. It is about defeating Trump in 2020. It is about controlling us. It is about seeing how far they can go in conditioning us. What will we take? How much will we stand for? It is about all of that. It is political. And for Fox to allow her to do that interview without any counters or any points on, well, can you tell us this? Can you tell us that? Everything that came out of her mouth in July was not new information, just a reiteration of what we already hear from the media, and that's how dangerous the virus is. I yield.
Wow. There's not a whole lot to say behind that, but it does lead into another layer of questioning. Alex, if you'll come back on for me for just a second. I think what Derek just explained, and maybe what my mind just caught, was it sounds like Derek saying it's not we the people that are scared at all. Sounds to me like the media and the elitists and the people at the top are scared. They're scared of a people that believe in the Almighty. And in that, they're panicked. They're trying to cascade and throw onto all of us. They're looking for the sheep in the pack. Alex, are there more sheep or are we more the shepherds?
Well, I think that it's tied to a little bit of both. I mean, we have as someone who believes, I mean, I agree fully with what Hank was saying, that it's the people who are afraid and a lot of people, and then the people who have faith. And I mean, if you have you need to be strong, you need to move through life, and I mean, there have been a lot worse and more dangerous things that have hit our nation and the world throughout the past 100 years, 200 years, and people still manage to move forward and not be hiding away. What Derek's saying about the media and those at the top being afraid, I mean, that's absolutely true. I mean, the advance of technology makes every single thing that they do much more easily seen and accessible, and putting out misinformation and keeping us distracted from the real issues of what's going on with our economy, our money supply, various totalitarian regimes around the world. I mean, moving us away from focusing on our ballooning debt and government abuses to focus on this virus is, I think it's making people afraid. And I think that people have not yet caught on to how to effectively filter propaganda and social control. I mean, looking online, I mean, it's very easy to fake things, to make people believe things that aren't true just from a few Facebook posts or tweets. And until people figure that out, I mean, we definitely are going to have a lot of people being fooled because they haven't been able to discern the correct information or just live their lives without relying on the media for what they should be doing or caring about. I mean, that to me, that's the easiest filter, is to not dictate one's life based on what other people are talking about, which goes back to faith.
Josie, y'all making me feel like I'm in church for a minute, and it's building in me. It's coming, and we're going to get there in the wrap up. But I'm trying to feed the questions and just get you started. But Josie, I'm coming to you. This is not Josie's first time watching any of this here. This is not Josie's first time. She has seen all of this before. Josie, you got 6 minutes. Just go. 6 minutes. It's yours.
Yes, sir. This is the same movie with different people in different language, which is English. And the big lesson that we are learning as American today is that we need to go back to our Christian base. We need to appropriate ourselves inside our spirit, the peace the Lord gave us before He ascended to heaven. So when a Christian is in the fear, that means the peace of Jesus is not in the person. So we need to go back to basic. We need to reinstate our Christian foundation as a nation. And I believe a great mother awakening is going to start happening. It's already happening. And I'm going to be going, if God allowed me, on September the 26th. Is going to be a repentant day in Washington, D.C. This is promoted by Jonathan Kent. He's calling all Christians to go to Washington, D.C. So we can be over there as a citizen and Christian to repent for what America has been doing and getting away from the Lord, and repent as a nation so that the Lord can execute over our country. Second of Chronicles 2:17, I believe, right? And that could be a great initiative, beginning of our nation to going back to basics. And yes, fear is a feeling that people can make people stay like a statue, like that moving, overwhelmed and fighting. But if we as a Christian nation that we are, we remember that Jesus gave us the peace, the only peace that He can give to comfort our spirit, to comfort our mind and our heart, I think we'll be okay. So just stay tuned. Just join us in this awakening and this repentant day, and you will see how Donald Trump is going to be elected, how people are going to start electing people like Derek Grayson and like me, new blood, new people. A lot of people are tired of politicians because they are seeing how they are being selling our country out and being doing things that are go against the constitution and so on. So Covington City is one of the examples. Last weekend I went to Covington and people over there, they were saying we need no new blood, new blood. Okay, we here, we are the new blood, right here, Derek, me, right here. So just elect us and we're gonna go and do what we have to do to support the Constitution and vote conservative on a conservative way. I yield back.
Josie, thank you so much for your closeout. And I think as we get more and more advanced into this general election season, as we advance, you and Derek are both getting traction that I don't even think you may even be aware of at this point. But in faith, the closeout's going to call it out. And I guarantee you, we're going to see a lot more here real soon. Hank, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to say whatever you want to say. Your closeout. What do you have to say to the people, brother?
Have faith. Have faith. I mean, we've never been through anything like this. I find myself being kind of the elder statesman with a lot of folks that I have conversations with, which is a new role for me. But I've lived long enough to have, and I think that's what life is for, is for learning and being able to become the person that God wants you to be, and to then translate that to other people, so that they can kind of learn from you as well. So I truly believe that this is a faith building time, and I think that I've written this several times online for folks to consider that unless the outcome is in doubt, faith does not build. So just think of Washington crossing the Delaware. I mean, can you imagine putting yourself in that situation? The outcome was in doubt. Not only was the outcome of the battle with the Hessians in doubt, but the outcome of whether this war for independence was going to succeed was in doubt the entire time. But we've never had, to my knowledge, I don't believe we've ever had a leader in this country like George Washington that had the faith of a George Washington, and it was faith that brought him through that. So I just encourage people to get on top of their faith and try to understand and put all this in perspective of what's really important in life and where this whole thing is going to go. And I believe that ultimately we're gonna end up on with this being a good experience, and ultimately I believe we're going to reclaim and restore what our founding fathers had bestowed to us.
Hank Sullivan, we always thank you, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Coming over to Alex Johnson. Alex, if I can get you in for just a minute, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to give your closing statement to the people that need to hear from you.
Well, thank you. And honestly, what I think people just need to remember regarding all that's going on is that there's so much more that unites us than what divides us in this country. Everything that's coming out, the propaganda that's coming out from the mainstream media really makes it seem like you only have two choices, that you can either support Black lives or you could support police, not just recognizing that most people support both. The idea that we could either oppose violations of constitutional rights or oppose demonizing police, or that you support disease spread or you support government mandates. And ultimately, I mean, humans can do all of those things at the same time. And that's what they're causing us to forget. And I think that people need to to ground themselves in faith, ground themselves in their fellow man, people in their communities, and also just to be organized politically. As I've mentioned before on this program, I mean, the Georgia Republican Assembly, I would encourage people to get involved. We're all grassroots. There are no, corporate interests pushing it. It's georgiara.com, and I would encourage more and more people to be involved in their local or statewide Republican assemblies to try to make a difference in politics.
Alex, same to you. We thank you, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Catherine Bernard, coming to you, your closing statement to the people that are watching tonight, our viewers, those that need to hear from you.
Well, thanks so much. And again, thank you for this forum. It's just such a wonderful time to speak to other people who are committed to freedom, who are committed to the founding principles of our country, and who really represent that's not just the ideal of dead white men, like we so often hear from the people trying to tear down the amazing history of liberty that our country has to offer. And so I just want to keep up with the theme of optimism that I think a lot of us have been touching on tonight. There are a lot of conversations happening about the role of government in individual lives that weren't happening last year, that people might not have even thought about happening last year. So let's take these opportunities that come to us. Let's take the wisdom and knowledge that we've gained from our previous efforts, our previous campaigns, and let's be the leaders that people are looking for right now when the politicians are merely following along with the loudest and most fearful of their constituents, rather than actually being the voices for liberty and for freedom and for protecting public safety in an authentic way that we actually need. So thanks, everybody, and have a wonderful week and have a lot of great conversations with your fellow Americans.
Catherine, tonight I want to thank you for being a part of my mission to fight. In the beginning of the show, I said I wanted to start a fight. Most people would interpret that as being that I wanted to fight amongst my panelists or fight amongst our politicians. But tonight, I wanted to start a fight to reveal to you the truth and to give you access to a peace that only one can give. Josie Cruz, tonight, in your closing statement, I ask that you take 2 minutes. Will you please address the people and let them know what is it that you will do in Washington, D.C., not only to hold your faith, but to show them what you're doing constantly and continuously?
When I get elected, I got one mission. We are in this big trouble just because one commission was delegated or annihilated, eliminated. That was the Un-American Activities Committee in the House. And that committee was eliminated, signed by Joe Biden in 1974. So one of my mission is to bring back that commission so we can stop the enemies of America doing activities against our country. With this commission, we will go back to our way of American living and a way of doing things. So that's one mission. You can find more information about me on my website, josiecruz2020.com. And when it comes to the district number 4, well, I'm going to simplify it in 3 words: opportunity zones, prosperity, and healing to the community. That's basically my 3 principal goals. Thank you so much.
Dear Grayson, you're up next. Josie, I want to take a second and just say thank you. Your spirit, your heart, your vision, your goal, your hope, I believe is a trek in faith. And for that, my sister, I support you, I endorse you, and I have your back.
Thank you.
Derek, it's all you, man. If you're in the Senate, how are you going to show people what you do?
Okay, well, I think I already show people what I do. I just need to be in Washington, D.C. To do more. And by my going to Washington, D.C., I'm taking the people with me. I had to tell a gentleman last night who talked about the power of D.C. So many people don't understand and see that the power belongs to the people. The power does not belong to me or them or any of the other people up there. We have given them the power. So I want to show them what it is to be a constitutionalist. I also want to show them what it is to be someone who is not afraid to expose by name those that are engaged in destroying the country. I don't need to call the names of liberal Democrats, but I need the names of the Republicans that give aid and comfort to the Democrats, because President Trump can't do it. Why? He needs their supports. It's the Republicans that have to support them. And the only time you've ever seen him go after a Republican was when that Republican went after him first. But as Hank mentioned earlier about Doug Collins taking the safe road, he took the safe road for DC. He did not take the high road for what the people of Georgia would like. They want to get back to work, and they want their children back in school, and they want to the freedom and liberty to make their own choices. And those things have been taken away from us in many areas, especially when you see preachers getting locked up for having church. So my number one goal is 100% of the Constitution, 100% of the time, to expose rhinos for the traitors that they are to their constituents, and to show the people that they are the ones that possess the power, not Washington, D.C. They send us to serve. And to date, I have never given a campaign stump speech or whatever where I have lauded over, well, I'm going to be the kind of leader that you can depend on. I don't want to be people's leaders. I want to lead by example, and leading by example means a willingness to serve the people first. I yield. Thank you very much. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Danny, for the awesome job you're doing. Hank Sullivan, Alex, Scott, all of my team, Josie. If I could show you what I feel for you in my heart, you'd start crying, because you know that I ain't got nothing but love for each and every one of you. And that's why we are here together doing this thing. Thank you.
Derek, I thank you. And again, as my brother in politics and in the spirit, you have my support, my endorsement, my love, and I look forward to seeing you real soon. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, tonight we thank you for tuning in. Those that tune in later, we hope that you'll take the time to go backwards and forwards, go through all of these topics, conversations, and the viewpoints of my panelists tonight. I want you to take the time to pay attention very carefully to what all of them said. Although the line of questioning appeared as though it was very controversial at times, the truth was the response in all of it was optimistic. Everybody made a reference to optimism. Why is that optimism so relevant in a show like this? Your Fox, your CNN, your CNBC, and all of your other major networks out there have taught you to follow their lead. Be scared when they're scared. Do as they say. But here on the Grayson Network, at the round table with me, your host, Danny Ellison, fear has no place. My question is, not have you gone and gotten your COVID-19 test? Have you gone and gotten your faith test? This today is a taste of your flavor, either in God or in flesh. You be the choice. Fear has no place at the table of the people. Fear only has a place with those that are opposed to the true victor. We know that God is our victor. That being said, those that are in fear are in opposition to the Almighty. That being said, there is power, wonder-working power in the precious blood of the Lamb. Tonight we talked about COVID-19 and all of the fear that comes along with it, the manipulation of the government, the overreach of the school system, the things that our children should run from or run to, your mask that's over your faith. I tell you this tonight, when upon bended knee before Almighty God, or when you lay your head on your pillow, join all of us as we will be praying for you. We ask that you'll pray for us, that we'll continue to have the courage to fight against spirits and principalities that threaten the people of our society and our world and their relationships with God. Tonight, thank you for joining us for our forum at the round table. And thank you for having church with us. The Bible says where 2 or 3 are gathered, he is present. And I pray that tonight you'll find that vision to be gathered with others. To my panelists again, I thank you. And from all of us here on the Grayson Network, the round table with Danny, we wish you a good night.